You're the CEO, you get to have these big ideas. How do you deal with people though who are working on a quarterly basis? They have things that they have to do every week. They have bugs they've got to fix. How do you make them think about this bigger picture rather than the stuff that they have to do in order to get raises, promoted, to get the next job internally they want?
So I think there's multiple dimensions to the answer. First is making sure we're all on the same page with regard to what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And we had this vision statement to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And I think one of the reasons Dan and I think a lot of folks would traditionally hear a statement like that, maybe write it down, in the notebook on day one of onboarding and then kind of tuck it aside or say, well, isn't that nice? Is because it doesn't provide much in the way of detail. There's not a roadmap there, it's just a vision statement. It's not a vision roadmap. It's not a vision that's accompanied by a set of strategic objectives or measurable goals. And so for us, we want to step further. We started saying, well, how are we going to make this a reality? What would it take? And that's where we came up with the vision to develop the world's first economic graph, which is basically a digital mapping of the global economy. So our goal is to make sure that there is a profile on LinkedIn for every member of the global workforce. That's all 3 billion plus people. There is a profile for every company in the world. There's roughly 60 to 70 million companies on a global basis when you include small and medium-sized businesses. We want there to be a digital representation for every job that is not only digitally accessible, but in total. And that's probably somewhere on the order of 10 to 20 million opportunities. A digital representation for every skill required to obtain those jobs. Presence for every university or higher educational organization that enables people to acquire the skills to get those jobs. And then to build a platform that enables every individual, every company, and every university the ability to share their professionally relevant knowledge if they're so inclined. That's something they want to do. And then we want to take a step back and allow capital, all forms of capital, intellectual capital, working capital, and human capital, to flow to where it can best be leveraged. And in doing so, we want to help lift and transform the global economy. So that goes beyond a statement. That starts to provide a framework through which we can make that possible. But that's not enough, because that's still an abstraction. So then you have to ask yourself the question, well, if we're serious about this, what would it take? What would it take to grow from 350 million professionals that are currently on LinkedIn to 780 million knowledge workers and students or pre-professionals to 3 billion people in the global workforce? And each one of those milestones or stepping stones requires a different way to approach things. With regard to companies, we had several million companies on the platform active, and we started asking ourselves the question, well, what would it take to grow from 3 million and maybe double that? And doubling's a pretty big deal, 3 to 6 million or 7 million in a short period of time. But that's only 1/10 of the 70 million addressable. What would it take to hit that? And it requires thinking about things in a completely different way. With regard to jobs, when I first started at the company, we had somewhere on the order of 8,000 job listings on LinkedIn. That was in early 2009, December 2008 was when I first started. And we had identified an addressable opportunity of several 100,000 high-value white-collar professional jobs, which was right in our sweet spot. And if you ask yourself the question, what would it take to have all jobs, you start to go way beyond several 100,000. You need 10 million, eventually 20 million. And that required us to think and approach that part of our business in a completely different way. And we went out and we acquired a company called Bright. And within 12 months of that acquisition, we had grown the number of jobs on LinkedIn from 340,000 to 3.4 million. And